Oh, love is funny. You think you're in control until you realize you've already fallen head over heels. That's exactly what happened when I saw Emma for the first time at that wedding. She was wearing a blue dress that made her eyes pop, and her smile lit up the whole room. Our mutual friends, Renata and Andre, were celebrating her union while, without even knowing it, they planted the seed for my own story. Emma was standing by the drinks table all alone when I finally worked up the courage to go over. I don't know about you, but I think the little sweets are the best part of any wedding, I said, grabbing a Brigadeiro. She laughed in that spontaneous way that I later learned was her signature and replied, I completely disagree. It's the moment when they let you dance without any judgments. We swapped numbers and the following week met up for coffee. The coffee turned into lunch, and that turned into dinner. We talked about everything, our families, our jobs, our dreams. Emma worked in digital marketing and had an infectious energy when she talked about her projects. Her enthusiasm captivated me instantly. After 3 months of dating, we were practically living together. She'd stay at my apartment 4 or 5 days a week. Our relationship evolved naturally, as if we were made for each other. At least, that's what I believed. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. 6 months later, I took Emma to meet my parents for a Sunday lunch. My mom, always suspicious of my girlfriends, surprisingly fell for her. She's special, she whispered while we were washing the dishes. My dad, more reserved, finally gave in when Emma showed genuine interest in his Army Days stories. Before long, Emma became part of the family routine. We celebrated birthdays, holidays, and special occasions together. I even got to know her family, her divorced parents, each with their own quirks, and her younger sister, who soon became like a sister to me too. We started making plans together. We were saving up for a trip to Europe, talking about officially living together, and sometimes even mentioning kids. I renovated my apartment and even set up a little workspace exclusively for her when she needed it. I changed my life so she would fit in perfectly. On our first anniversary as a couple, I organized a surprise dinner and gave her a small safe where I'd put part of my salary every month. For our future, I explained. Her eyes lit up, and I felt like I was doing everything right. My friend Carlos was the first to comment. We were at a happy hour after work when he asked, "Don't you think Emma is a little too much for you?" I was taken aback by the question. "What do you mean?" I asked. "She's outgoing. She attracts attention everywhere she goes, always surrounded by people. You're more of a quiet type. I'm just worried about you, man," he explained. I ignored the comment, but I soon realized that wouldn't be the last time I heard something like that. Marcos, my college friend, was more blunt one afternoon while watching soccer. "She looks like the type who can't settle for less. Just be careful." Even my cousin Louisa, who rarely involved herself in my life, remarked at a barbecue, "Emma seems to like the attention she gets more than you." Those words bothered me, but I quickly pushed them aside. What did they know about our relationship? Emma loved me. I was sure of that. Yes, she was outgoing and charming. Those were the qualities that attracted me from the start. I took those comments as either envy or a misunderstanding of our dynamic. Ashley's message came on a regular Tuesday. Ashley had been friends with Emma since college, but we'd never been close. "We need to talk about Emma. It's important," the text said. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was just some planning for her upcoming birthday. But Ashley insisted. "Scott, as her friend, I feel like I have to tell you this. Emma has been cheating on you for months. It's not the first time, and it probably won't be the last." My world collapsed. I read and reread that message, looking for any ambiguity, any alternative interpretation. I called Ashley immediately, my voice trembling. "What's this about? Are you sure? I've got photos of her leaving a hotel with him last week. I know they meet at least twice a month." She confided it to me, thinking I'd be supportive. "I'm sorry, but you don't deserve this." We hung up, and I stood there paralyzed, staring at the wall. Every conversation I'd had with Emma in the past few months replayed like a movie in my mind. The last-minute excuses for work emergencies. Weekends spent visiting a sick aunt who never got better. Phones always facing down. How could I have been so blind? Even with the evidence that Ashley sent me, a part of me refused to believe it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Ashley had some hidden reason for trying to ruin our relationship. I needed to see it for myself. On Thursday, Emma said she was going to spend the night working on an important presentation. It was her usual excuse. "I'm going to sleep over at the apartment tonight so I don't disturb you by leaving the lights on too late," she explained. I nodded and wished her luck. While inside, my heart was pounding with the plan I was making. I waited 2 hours after she left and drove over to her apartment. The lights were on, which seemed to confirm her story. I used the spare key she had, given me on our 6-month anniversary, and slipped in quietly. I could hear sounds coming from the bedroom. Laughter, murmurs, unmistakable noises. I grabbed my phone and started recording, pushing the door open just a crack into the bedroom. There was Emma, in someone else's arms, a man I'd never seen before. I kept recording for a few seconds, my hands trembling, until they finally noticed me. "Scott!" Emma shouted, pulling the sheet over her body. The man next to her looked more annoyed than embarrassed, as if I were the intruder. Ironically, technically I was. "How long?" I asked, my voice strangely calm despite the storm raging inside me. I stopped recording and slipped my phone into my pocket, wanting to look her straight in the eyes. Emma got up, still wrapped in the sheet, while her lover remained lying down, now with a mocking smile on his face. "Scott, I can explain. It's not what it seems." "Really? It's not what it seems?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Because it sure seems like you're in bed with another guy while telling me you were working. It sure seems like you've been lying to me." The man finally got up, revealing his muscular build. "Look, man, I'd suggest you leave. Emma and I have been together for a while now. She just didn't know how to break it off with you." I stared at Emma, hoping she would deny it, say it was just a one-time mistake, something terrible. Instead, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before, contempt mixed with pity. "Is that true?" I asked, feeling my chest tighten. Emma sighed as if she were tired of a long charade. "Scott, you're a nice guy. Really, too nice. But you're also weak, predictable. I needed something more. Someone who could challenge me, you know? A real man." Those words hit me like physical blows. Each syllable cut deeper than the one before. I stood there stunned as she continued. "I tried to enjoy our little routine, your safe plans for the future, but I'm not that kind of woman. I needed excitement, passion, something you just couldn't give me." The man was now by her side, his arm around her waist, as if he were proudly showing off a trophy. My stomach churned. "Then why didn't you break up with me?" I managed to ask. "Because you were convenient," she replied simply. "Steady, predictable, always there. Why toss that aside? You took care of me when I needed it. He gives me what you can't." I walked over to the dresser where Emma kept some of my stuff. I grabbed my spare key and placed it on the furniture. "Aren't you gonna make a scene?" she asked, sounding almost disappointed by my controlled reaction. "No," I replied, walking toward the door. "You've already done enough for both of us." I left that apartment with the weight of the world on my shoulders. In the elevator, alone, I finally let the tears fall. They weren't just tears for the betrayal, but for the humiliation of realizing how she really saw me. As someone convenient, weak, less than a man. Someone who could be used and then tossed aside when no longer needed. That night, I couldn't stand being alone with my thoughts. I automatically drove to the bar where Carlos and some friends usually gathered on Thursdays. I needed familiar faces, comforting words, anything to stop me from completely sinking. I found them at our usual table. As soon as they saw me, they knew something was off. My red eyes and my desolate look said it all. "Man, you look like crap. What happened?" Marcos asked, shoving a beer in my direction. The words poured out like a flood. I told them everything. The message from Ashley, my trip to the apartment, the scene I witnessed, Emma's cruel words. I expected empathy, maybe anger on my behalf, the kind of support friends offer in crises. What I got was completely different. Carlos let out a laugh. "Sorry, man, but we tried to warn you." I stared at him, incredulous. "Yeah, it's true," agreed Fernando, another friend. "Even I only noticed something was off after seeing you two together a few times. She treated you like a puppy and you never even noticed. Remember when I told you she was too much for you?" continued Carlos. "It wasn't a compliment for her, it was a warning for you. Women like Emma never settle for guys like you. They're always wanting more." "Guys like me?" I repeated, feeling my anger replace the sadness. "You know, nice guys who treat them way too well. They get bored. They need drama, a challenge." Marcos gestured as if stating the obvious. "Emma is the kind of woman who says she wants a good guy, but actually only respects someone who treats her badly." "You were way too naive, Scott," Fernando added, shaking his head. "You could see in her eyes that she was cheating. On you. All those mysterious outings, the text she hid when you were around. Every comment stung like salt in an open wound. I hadn't just lost my girlfriend and my dignity, but I was now realizing that my friends saw me as a fool, An innocent guy who didn't even deserve genuine compassion. You all could have been more straightforward, I murmured, gripping my beer tightly. If it was that obvious. Would you have listened anyway? Carlos shot back. You were completely blinded by her. You thought she was perfect. She ignored us at Rodrigo's last birthday party, Marcos recalled. She was glued to her phone all night, probably setting up a date with that guy. And when we mentioned it, you defended her. I downed my beer in one long gulp, trying to smother the pain and humiliation. I ordered another, and then another after that. My friends continued with their proof that the betrayal was predictable, each example highlighting my stupidity, my willful blindness. After a while, I stopped listening. Their "I told you so" tone and occasional laughs just became background noise as I sank deeper into my own world of shame and anger. Were these really my friends? People laughing at my pain instead of supporting me? I left the bar early, ignoring their protests for me to stay and drink out the pain. On my way home, I realized I was utterly alone in this situation. The woman I loved had cheated on me, and my friends thought I was pathetic. No one was truly on my side. I got home completely drunk, not just from the alcohol, but from the anger and humiliation. The unlit apartment seemed to mock my loneliness. There were signs of Emma everywhere, a hairbrush in the bathroom, an abandoned coat, photos on the fridge. Every item was a reminder of how much I had dedicated myself to someone who never really appreciated me. I grabbed a bottle of whiskey I'd been saving for special occasions. What moment could be more special than the complete collapse of my life? I poured a generous glass and sat on the couch, phone in hand, staring at the video I'd recorded. There was the proof. It wasn't paranoia, it wasn't insecurity. It was the raw, painful reality. Emma, the woman I'd give everything for, in another man's arms, saying I wasn't enough, that I was weak. Weak. The word echoed in my mind as the alcohol lowered my inhibitions and fueled my anger. Why was I suffering alone while she was probably still out with that guy? Why should I carry the burden of shame by myself when it was she who had broken promises, lied, and cheated? A real man, she said. Well, a real man doesn't accept being humiliated without a response. I opened WhatsApp and saw several groups we were both in. Mutual friends, work colleagues, even one of her family groups where I'd been added. People who would probably see me as the pitiful loser, the idiot who wasn't enough for Emma. Without thinking twice, I selected the video. My finger hovered over the send button for a few seconds. A small part of me tried to stop me, warning me of consequences, privacy issues, legal problems. But that voice was quickly drowned out by the pain, my wounded pride, my rising anger. I sent the video to 3 main groups: our close friends, work colleagues, and a larger group of acquaintances. Along with it, I wrote a simple message. For those who thought our relationship was perfect, the real Emma you all admire so much. As soon as I hit send for the 3rd time, I felt a mix of relief and panic. What had I just done? A part of me was already regretting it. But another part, the dominant part in that moment, felt a vengeful satisfaction. She had humiliated me, exposed me intimately. Now the world would know who she really was. My phone started vibrating, non-stop. Messages, calls, notifications. I ignored them all. I poured another glass of whiskey and turned the phone's sound off. Let them deal with the truth, just as I had to. While the alcohol finally led me to a restless sleep, a part of me knew I'd crossed a line. But at that moment, I didn't care. If being a real man meant being as cruel and ruthless as her lover, then maybe it was time to show that I could be just as much. I woke up the next morning with a splitting headache and 137 notifications on my phone. The reality of what I'd done hit me as soon as I was fully awake. I picked up the phone with trembling hands, preparing for the worst. The reactions were a whirlwind of emotions and opinions. Some people openly supported me. She deserved to be exposed. No one should go through what you did. I always had a feeling about her. You deserve someone better, Scott. Others expressed shock and disapproval about the method. I understand your pain, but exposing something like that is wrong. You're not that kind of person. Dude, I agree she was terrible. But this? You've stooped to her level. And then there were those who fiercely defended Emma. You have no right to expose her privacy like that. It's a crime. She might have been wrong. But you're being vindictive and pathetic. Emma had sent me dozens of messages alternating between pleas and threats. Please, delete that video. You're destroying my life. My lawyer's going to get in touch. What you did is illegal. How could you do this to me? I thought you loved me. That last message made me laugh bitterly. How could she dare to invoke love after what she'd done? After what she said? Her lover also somehow got a hold of my number and sent explicit threats about what he'd do when he saw me. I deleted his messages without replying. The phone rang. It was my mom. I took a deep breath before answering. "Scott, what happened?" Beatrice called me about a video. Beatrice was Emma's cousin, and apparently, the news had already reached the family. I briefly explained the situation. My mom sighed heavily. "Son, I'm really sorry about Emma. Truly. But that video wasn't the right thing to do, no matter how much she hurt you. And what would be right, Mom? Suffering in silence while she carries on happily? Life has its way of settling debts without us interfering. You've sullied your own character with this." Her words hit me deeper than any of the criticisms in the messages. I hung up, promising we'd talk later, and spent the next few hours reading all the reactions, watching friendships crumble in real time as people took sides. Ashley, who originally warned me about the cheating, wrote, "I wanted you to know the truth, not to ruin her life. You went too far." Carlos, who had mocked my naivety the night before, now seemed impressed. "I never thought you had the guts to do something like this. Extreme, but she brought it on herself." Later that afternoon, I received a formal email from a law firm, demanding that I remove the video from all platforms or face legal action for violating privacy and sharing intimate material without consent. Emma's threat wasn't empty. I tried to remove the video from the groups, but it was too late. It had already been downloaded, shared, and circulated. Pandora's box was open and there was no closing it again. I stared out the window of my apartment, watching life carry on normally outside while my world burned in chaos. A part of me deeply regretted not the fact that I'd exposed Emma, but for lowering myself to a level I never thought I'd reach. Yet another part still felt that dark satisfaction knowing she was suffering now too, that there were consequences for her actions. The phone kept buzzing nonstop. Every notification was a reminder of the chaos I'd unleashed. I realized there were no winners in this story, only different shades of loss. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. 3 days passed after the video incident. 3 days of non-stop messages, legal threats, and judgment from every side. 3 days in which I barely even left my apartment, oscillating between deep regret and bitter justifications for my actions. On the morning of the 4th day, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt since before I met Emma. I sat on the bed, looking at the mess my apartment had become. Empty bottles, food wrappers, clothes scattered around. A physical reflection of the chaos in my life. I grabbed my phone and started doing what I should have done a long time ago. I blocked Emma's number. I blocked her lover. I blocked everyone who had sent me messages either defending her or attacking me for the exposure. One by one, I removed the noise, the outside voices that were amplifying my pain. Then I wrote one single message and sent it to the same groups where I'd shared the video. Sorry for the way I handled my pain. The video was a mistake, born out of a moment of despair and humiliation. That doesn't justify what I did, and I take full responsibility for the consequences. Starting today, this is over. I ask for respect for my healing process and my privacy from now on. After sending that message, I left all the groups. I didn't need to see the reactions or judgments. That was my final word on the matter. I called my mom, who had tried reaching me several times. "I'm fine," I assured her. "I made a mistake, but I'm moving on. I need some time alone to get my life back together." Then I started cleaning the apartment. Every item of Emma's I found went into a box. Clothes, books, beauty products, gifts she'd given me. There was no anger in these gestures anymore, just the certainty that I had to completely erase her presence in my life to move on. The doorbell rang in the middle of the afternoon. It was Carlos, Fernando, and Marcos, seemingly concerned about my sudden silence. "You guys aren't welcome right now," I said simply, keeping the door slightly ajar. "When I needed friends, you all chose to laugh at my pain. Maybe someday we can rebuild our friendship, but not today." I shut the door on their protests. It was time to choose carefully who would be part of my life from now on. In the following weeks, I received 2 formal legal notices, one demanding a public retraction and another threatening a lawsuit. I forwarded both to a family friend who was a lawyer, and he guided me on how to proceed. The threats eventually stopped when it became clear that I wouldn't respond to provocation. Emma tried to contact me through mutual friends, unknown numbers, even showing up at my workplace once. I stayed firm in my silence. There was nothing left to say. Gradually, the storm passed. People found new scandals to comment on, new stories to judge. I started therapy, re-engaged with hobbies I had abandoned, reconnected with true friends who respected my space and offered genuine support. 6 months later, on an ordinary Saturday afternoon, I realized that I'd gone an entire day without thinking about Emma. It was like finally being able to breathe after being submerged for so long. I wasn't fully healed. Some scars never completely fade, but I was living again. I learned that trust is something precious that needs to be earned, not taken for granted. I learned that true love doesn't diminish you or require you to be less just to accommodate someone else. And above all, I learned that even in the darkest moments, when we act impulsively and out of rage, there's always a way back to the light, to dignity. If you asked me today if I regret having met Emma, I'd say no. Every experience, even the painful ones, shapes us. Emma taught me a lot about myself. My weaknesses, yes, but also my ability to survive, to rebuild, and to move forward stronger and wiser. Her betrayal didn't define my story. My impulsive reaction didn't either. What defines my story is how I chose to rise up after it all, how I chose to forgive, not her, but myself, and how I finally learned that my worth doesn't depend on anyone else's validation. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this.